contact us with your comments, suggestions, or questions. Thanks.
The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. Your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Sunday, June 14th. Your readers for this hour. Your readers are
Dan Arth
and Edwin Vieira. Here's a look at the weather forecast ahead. It'll be breezy in the morning today with clouds breaking, but not as warm with showers and a heavier thunderstorm today, and a high of 72. It'll be cooler tonight with a stray shower and a low of 49. It'll be intervals of clouds and sun tomorrow with a high of 68 to start the work week and a low of 56. Tuesday it'll be a shower in the afternoon and partly sunny with a high of 72 and a low of 59. Breezier on Wednesday, more showers on the way on Wednesday with a high of 71 and a low 63. Showers are going to be heavy with thunderstorms on Thursday and a high 71 and a low of 56. More showers to start off the weekend on Friday with a high of 70 and a low of 57. And more thunderstorms on Saturday with a high of 74 and a low of 58. Now here's Dan with our first story.
Thank you, Edwin. And our lead story is Hochul drops hints on state legislation to ban data centers. Governor weighs law that would impose a 1-year moratorium. Article is by Robert Gavin. Governor Kathy Hochul is in no rush to welcome more data centers to New York. When asked about a proposed law to enact a 1-year moratorium on the development of new data centers in New York State, Hochul twice aired unprompted concerns about the potential impact the centers could have on the power grid and New York's wallets. Hochul did not say whether she would sign the bill, the Responsible Data Center Development Act, which passed both houses of the state legislature on June 4th. It's not fair to ratepayers in our state to have the higher costs because of a data center coming in, Hochul told reporters in Rochester on Tuesday. So even before the talk of a moratorium, I had put this out there saying, no, we are not letting this happen. I will look closely at that bill, but also we were talking about this long before then. Later that day in Onondaga County, Hochul, citing remarks in her annual State of the State in January, said she was putting data centers on notice that any center must pay for its own energy bills. This is not something that local communities should have to cover, Hochul said. But with that as the backdrop, I'm looking at that bill, and I have until the end of the year to review it. The emergence of data centers which power artificial intelligence have generated wide opposition and support across the state and beyond. The Riverview Innovation and Technology Campus's plans to construct a 495,000 square foot AI data center at the former Tonawanda Coke factory are now paused, but not before drawing concerns from elected officials. Erie County Executive Mark Poloncarz has said no data centers will receive tax breaks from the Erie County Industrial Development Agency while he is in office. I think that Hochul's comments are, quite frankly, spot on, said Tonawanda Town Supervisor John Flynn. From an electricity standpoint, whenever you analyze these data centers, there's two things you've got to look at. The first thing is the cost to the surrounding residents and businesses, and secondly is the reliability of the grid and the reliability of the power for the people in the community surrounding the data centers. From a cost standpoint, he said, it is not fair statewide to put the burden on the residents who live around the data centers. Other proposed data centers in the region include the Stream Data Center's plans to construct a 500 megawatt data center complex in the Science, Technology, and Advanced Manufacturing Park in the town of Alabama in Genesee County. There also is a plan for a data center at the former Sugar Hill Golf Course in the town of Portland in Chautauqua County. The moratorium bill, sponsored by Assemblymember Dee Dee Barrett, a Hudson Valley Democrat, and Senator Kristen Gonzalez, a Democrat representing parts of Queens, Brooklyn, and Manhattan, passed the Assembly 103 to 38. It passed the Senate 43 to 17. Every Western New York Democrat voted yes on the bill. Assemblymember Patrick Burke, Democrat Orchard Park, was absent due to a family emergency. Every Western New York Republican voted against it. I consider it a prudent move to press the pause button on data centers to allow localities time to grapple with their impacts, Assemblymember William Conrad, Democrat Tonawanda, said in a statement when asked about the governor's remarks. Each proposal ought to be weighed on a case-by-case basis, and with the issue gaining prominence nationally, I think a one-year moratorium offers a common-sense response to both community members and developers. I am encouraged to hear that Governor Hochul seems to be leaning that way as well. Senator Jeremy Zellner, Democrat Tonawanda, said in a statement that he couldn't agree more with Hochul's position that New Yorkers should not be forced to subsidize data center development. Before projects of this scale move forward, our neighbors deserve clear answers about the impacts on energy costs, infrastructure, public health, and the environment, the senator said. Assemblymember Jonathan Rivera, Democrat Buffalo, who is facing Zellner in a Democratic primary for Zellner's seat, said in a statement that passing the moratorium was a good first step, but added, we should not make a mistake. We should not mistake a temporary delay for a permanent victory. Rivera said the developers of the proposed Tonawanda data center have made it clear they want to move forward with the project. That's exactly why Governor Hochul must act quickly, Rivera said. Every day that passes creates a possibility that work could begin, approvals could advance, and communities could lose the opportunity to have a meaningful voice in decisions that will impact them for decades.
Group aims to help Muslim community grapple with tragedy, from Ben Sujimoto. A community coalition in development for the last 2 years will have a challenging first project, helping Buffalo's Muslim community respond to issues central to the June 1st tragedy that left 4 people dead. The American Muslim Affairs Coalition, or AMAC, will meet for the first time this week, bring education, training, and resources focused on mental health and domestic violence in the wake of the deaths of 43-year-old Shukri Muthana, who was killed while working at a corner store in Black Rock, and 26-year-old Aisha Abdullah and 2 boys, aged 4 and 3 years old, who were killed in their Cheektowaga home. Salah Q. Muhammad, Abdullah's 29-year-old husband, faces 4 murder charges from the incidents, which occurred within 1 hour of each other in 2 different communities. It is devastating for everyone, said Dr. Khalid J. Quasi, founding president of the Muslim Public Affairs Council of Western New York, and I don't think the community is coming out of it as of now. Quasi said the local Muslim community still has more questions than answers as it relates to the motives and specific connections related to the June 1st killings. Quasi said that Muthana and Mohammed were not related, although they did come to America from the same area of Yemen. We don't honestly know, Quasi said, and I think the family, the close friends, are struggling with that. Funerals were held last week for all 4 victims. The Muslim leader said he believes mental health struggles were a factor in the homicides. I'm not an expert in mental health, Quasi said, but as an observer, I would suspect that mental health would play a part in such a tragedy, because how do you kill your children, you know? How do you kill your most loved family members? Kazi, a primary care doctor specializing in internal medicine, said he is encouraged by the unity so far within AMAC, the fledgling group that features roughly 20 ethnic backgrounds and extends far beyond Lackawanna, which has traditionally been the hub of the local Yemeni community. Many of us come with sort of baggage of our own based on our culture and history, and we want to merge into an American culture where you add something new and give up something old, Kazi said. So obviously that in itself is a challenge, but the bottom line is that at the basic level, at the fundamental level, do we need this? The answer is emphatic yes from all ethnic groups. Their task, however, is flush with barriers, including the subject itself. Mental health is a taboo in many communities, and to some extent, it's a taboo in Muslim communities as well, Kazi said. I don't think it's a secret that mental health across the country has not been perceived well at every level, but the fact remains that we need it, and we can't close our eyes to it. Kazi said the group of leaders plans to engage healthcare professionals, physicians, psychiatrists, counselors, and family liaisons, as well as explore funding opportunities related to mental health emergencies. The goal is to give the Muslim community a better understanding of mental health and to help prevent, quote, such a massacre from happening again. And even though domestic violence is clearly contrary to the teachings of the Quran, Kazi said, it nevertheless happens in Muslim communities. He mentioned Rahama, or Resources and Help Against Marital Abuse, as a key community partner. The organization on its website is described as the area's only Muslim and female-led nonprofit that serves underserved immigrant, refugee, and Muslim women facing domestic violence. It's located on Delaware Avenue in the Elmwood Village near Canisius High School. More details about the homicides are expected to emerge as the criminal case against Muhammad moves forward. In the meantime, Kazi wants to build something that can provide lasting help to others in crisis. We can only hope that the commitment for success will not be temporary, but it will be permanent, he said, so that we can actually not only roll it out but implement it on a long-term basis. These issues can't be solved by a magic wand.
Thanks, Edwin. Our next story. Old Fort Niagara is steeped in history. French castle turns 300 older than America itself. Articles by Dan Higgins. The United States is preparing to mark its 250th birthday. At the mouth of the Niagara River and along the shore of Lake Ontario, Old Fort Niagara is celebrating an anniversary of its own. The French castle, the oldest building on the 22-acre fort property, turns 300 this year. The castle was completed in 1726, half a century before the Declaration of Independence, but the forces that shaped the United States were already at work there. Empire, trade, war, diplomacy with native peoples, and the struggle for control of North America's interior. At Old Fort Niagara, much of that history passed through one strategic point, the place where the Niagara River empties into Lake Ontario. On a bright spring day in early June, the fort was preparing to celebrate the 300th anniversary of the castle. Its layered history could be seen almost everywhere. Sections of the fort are marked by the coats of arms of France and Great Britain and by the Great Seal of the United States, reminders that three different powers controlled the same site at different moments in North American history. Outside a former Powder magazine, a man in 18th century clothing prepared to demonstrate musket fire for tourists seated nearby. From the fort's ramparts, visitors can look across Lake Ontario toward the Toronto skyline, visible roughly 30 miles away on a clear day. Much closer is Fort George, the Canadian fort across the Niagara River, about 1,300 yards from Old Fort Niagara. Robert Emerson, executive director of Old Fort Niagara, said the fort's survival sets it apart from many other 18th century military sites. Many forts from that period were built for a specific strategic purpose and later abandoned, dismantled, burned, or reconstructed. Fort Niagara was different, Emerson said, because the French, the British, and later the United States all found new uses for it. That is why so many of its old buildings survived. A strategic control point. The fort was built because of geography. In the 17th and 18th centuries, the Great Lakes formed one of the continent's great transportation routes. Waterways carried people, trade goods, military supplies, and imperial ambition deep into the interior of North America. But the route had one unavoidable obstacle: Niagara Falls. You can't sail a boat up Niagara Falls, Emerson said, and you can only sail down once. Anyone moving between Lake Ontario and the upper Great Lakes had to leave the water, haul cargo up the Niagara Escarpment, and use the Niagara Portage. Native people had used that route for generations before Europeans arrived. The French understood that whoever controlled the mouth of the Niagara River could influence movement through the region and into the Great Lakes. And you are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service. And the time is 9:15 a.m. for those listening in the morning and 4:15 p.m. to those listening in the afternoon. Claimed by three powers, the French held Fort Niagara for 33 years during the French and Indian War. A British and colonial force captured it in 1759 after a 19-day siege. The British then held the fort beyond the end of the American Revolution, even though the Treaty of Paris was supposed to convey it to the new United States at the end of the war. Treaty disputes delayed the transfer, and American troops did not take control until 1796. By then, the British had moved across the river and built Fort George on the Canadian side. During the War of 1812, the geography of Old Fort Niagara changed from advantage to vulnerability. Its strongest defenses had been built to face east toward the British threat coming from the Mohawk Valley. Now, the enemy was across the river to the west within artillery range. The British captured Fort Niagara in December 1813 and held it until the end of the war, when it was returned to the United States once again by treaty in 1815. Layers of history. The site remained useful long after the early frontier wars passed. It played a role during the Civil War when the Union worried that Britain might enter the war on the side of the Confederacy. It later became part of a larger U.S. Army post during World War II. It held German prisoners of war. During the Cold War, it served as headquarters for the Nike anti-aircraft missile batteries that ringed western New York. Greg Smith, director of the New York State Bureau of Historic Sites, thinks of Old Fort Niagara as concentric rings of history. At the center is the French castle. British fortifications were built around it. Around those are early American military works. Beyond them was the larger U.S. Army base that remained active into the 1960s. Visitors can move through those layers almost physically, walking from one era into another. A painful chapter in Seneca history. The fort's history also intersects with the history of the Seneca Nation and other Haudenosaunee people in ways that are more painful than celebratory. The Seneca are the westernmost of the Six Nations and are known as the keeper of the western door. Long before the French built the castle, native people had lived, traveled, traded, and governed in the region. During the American Revolution, Fort Niagara was a British command center, supply depot, trade post, and center of native diplomacy. British officials worked there to maintain alliances with native nations, including Seneca and other Haudenosaunee people, many of whom the British as more likely than the United States to protect their homelands. In 1779, after American forces in the Sullivan-Clinton campaign destroyed Seneca and Cayuga villages, crops and food supplies across what is now New York, thousands of indigenous and loyalist refugees fled to Fort Niagara. Smith said that episode remains a painful part of Seneca historical memories. There's a much longer history of people on this continent than the United States, he said. We are currently celebrating our 250th anniversary of independence from the British Empire, but that's actually a small piece of a much longer history. That longer history is also the reason the fort had to be saved. Saved from ruin. By the early 20th century, Old Fort Niagara was badly deteriorated. The Army had moved out of the old fortifications. Lake Ontario was undermining the seawall, and the French castle was in danger of collapse. The 18th century buildings that had survived wars and changes in empire were decaying. In the 1920s, local citizens formed the old Fort Niagara Association to advocate for the site's repair and preservation. Federal restoration money began flowing in the 1920s, and by 1934, the restored fort had opened as a museum. Emerson said the association, which still operates the day-to-day historic site, was born out of an understanding that the fort could have disappeared. If it hadn't been for those people, he said, this place wouldn't be here.
And now on to world news. Ukraine commander aims to cut Crimea off from Russia, from Olena Harmash and Sergei Karazi from Reuters. Deep in an underground bunker where walls of screens stream live data from across the battlefield, the commander of Ukraine's drone forces is poring over terabytes of information to map out his next campaign, cutting Crimea off from Russia. Ukraine's escalating drone strikes across Russian-occupied parts of the country have disrupted military logistics and fuel supplies, prompting authorities last month to introduce fuel rationing in Crimea. Robert Brovdy, commander of Ukraine's unmanned systems forces, said the campaign has reduced the traffic using Novorossiya Highway, a critical Russian military supply route through occupied southern Ukraine to Crimea, by more than two-thirds over the past month. Within another month, Ukraine would have total control over the road, said Brovdy, who is best known by his call sign, Magyar, a nod to his ethnic Hungarian roots. We will isolate Crimea in the near future, Brovdy told Reuters in his cramped cubicle inside the bunker, as he sipped black tea and smoked one cigarette after another. Russia seized the Crimea Peninsula and swaths of eastern Ukraine in 2014. Brovdy described striking vehicles on the exposed highway as, quote, as easy as shooting partridges in an open field. Russia's defense ministry did not respond to a request for comment for this story. President Vladimir Putin acknowledged last week Ukraine's drone attacks were causing damage but posed no threat to Russia's economy. Military analysts say Ukraine's campaign of mid-range strikes inside Russian-controlled territory has cut supplies to its front line, bringing their advances to a near standstill last month, and weakened its air defenses, opening the way for longer-range strikes that have destroyed oil infrastructure and arms manufacturing deep inside Russia. Brovdy said one of his strategic aims was to force Moscow to pull back troops rather than push forward. We will create conditions that will make it extremely difficult for any military personnel or those working in the defense industry to remain in Crimea in the temporarily occupied territories or use the access routes to them. Over more than 4 years of the war, Brovdy has transformed himself from a wealthy grain trader into one of Ukraine's most effective military commanders. Since he took command of Ukraine's drone forces last June, the 50-year-old has aggressively scaled up their operations. The number of mid-range combat sorties increased 28-fold over the year, while deep strikes into Russian territory increased almost fourfold over the same period, the drone forces commander said. In the first 5 months of this year, the units destroyed 174 Russian air defense complexes worth about $5.4 billion, Brovdy said, clearing their way to other targets. By systemically targeting Russia's military manpower, oil facilities, and weapons production, Brovdy hopes to inflict losses painful enough to undermine Moscow's ability and willingness to continue the war. We're opening the door to vast spaces where the pain of the war, which is felt in nearly every Ukrainian town, should be felt, including in the consciousness of residents, said Brovdy, dressed in a black cap and black t-shirt. He added Ukraine has not and will not strike directly at civilians and civilian targets. Russia in recent weeks accused Kyiv of killing dozens of civilians in occupied Ukraine. Michael Kaufman, senior fellow in the Russia and Eurasia program at the Carnegie Endowment, said advances in drone technology made it feasible for Ukraine to cut off Crimea over time, but achieving the broader strategic aim of rolling back Russian forces would still require a coordinated ground offensive. Kaufman added Russia's own elite drone unit, known as Rubicon, was working hard to neutralize Ukraine's current advantage in mid-range drones. Convicted in absentia in Russia on terrorism charges in March, Brovdy is one of Moscow's highest value targets. His air war is conducted from a deep underground location close to the front line. The Reuters team was taken to meet Brovdy in a van with blackened out windows and led downstairs. Rows of sleeping pods line a corridor that opens into a room filled with dozens of screens displaying real-time battlefield data. Brightly colored paintings by leading Ukrainian artists, some from Brovdy's private collection, hang alongside captured Russian drones. Brovdy, who comes from western Ukraine, joined the military as a volunteer at the start of Russia's invasion in 2022. He created his Medyar's Birds unit, now Ukraine's most powerful drone brigade, from scratch. Every strike is filmed, verified, and logged. Monitors on a wall display a detailed scorecard, updated in real time. Between 10 and 12 terabytes of information are archived daily for use by future AI models. Brovdi, who peppered his comments with black humor, framed the war in business terms. This is our accounting firm, Previous Business Projects, which we adapted just for military purposes. Changed grain carriers, wagons, and grain to types of weapons, ammunition, and our clientele is a little different, he said.
And our next world story, deal to end war may come today. Iran denies timing. Article by Iman Abu Hassari, Steve Holland, and Saeed Saeed. President Trump and mediator Pakistan said on Saturday an initial deal to end the war in the Middle East would be signed on Sunday, although Iran denied the signing would take place so soon. Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif said the two sides had agreed on a framework for a peace deal and that Islamabad was preparing for an electronic signing on Sunday to be followed by technical level talks next week. Trump said in a social media post that the deal with Iran was scheduled to be signed on Sunday and that the Strait of Hormuz, a vital artery for global oil supplies which Iran has blocked, would be immediately open to all after it was signed. Earlier on Saturday, Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Asmal Baghi cautioned against commenting on the timing of the signing. We will have to wait and see about the exact date of the signing of the memorandum of understanding, although it will not be tomorrow. State media quoted Baghi as saying, the possibility of this happening in the coming days cannot be ruled out. However, due to the hesitation of the other side, we must be cautious in making any comments about this process. A U.S. official who spoke to reporters later declined to be drawn in on the timing, but said, it's a great deal and a very strong deal. It is not the first time the two sides have appeared close to an initial agreement on ending the war that began on February 28th with joint U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran. But Sharif said on X, we are closer to a peace deal than ever before. The war has sent global energy prices sharply higher and killed thousands of people, mostly in Iran and Lebanon, where the war has revived a conflict between Israel and Iran-aligned Hezbollah militants. What's in the deal? Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araki said on Friday that while changes in the deal were still possible, the tentative agreement showed his country had emerged stronger from the conflict. Hours after those remarks, U.S. forces shot down multiple Iranian one-way attack drones heading toward the Strait of Hormuz, a source familiar with the matter told Reuters. The source, who spoke on condition of anonymity, said the drones had posed a threat to commercial traffic. U.S. Central Command later confirmed the action and said the strait, a major artery for global oil supplies, was open. Iran has for months effectively blockaded the strait, and the U.S. Navy has blocked Iranian ports to reduce its oil exports. The proposed memorandum of understanding calls for reopening the strait and lifting the U.S. naval blockade, sources on all sides of the talk said. Negotiations over Iran's nuclear program, Trump's stated rationale for starting the war, would take place afterwards. Iran is going to open up the Strait of Hormuz. That's a requirement. It could be open with no tolls. As they do that, we will lift our blockade, said the U.S. official who spoke on Saturday. It's going to happen in conjunction, and part of the next step, the phase after that, is going to be the demining of the straits, the official said, indicating countries in the group of 7 major powers could have a role in this. Frozen assets. Draft terms described to Reuters by multiple sources indicate the U.S. would begin releasing billions of dollars in frozen Iranian assets and waive sanctions on its oil exports in return for Iran opening the strait. Iran's Fars news agency quoted Bagai as saying the release of Iran's frozen assets was an integral part of the agreement, and also that Iran would have to charge for services in the Strait of Hormuz. Fars also quoted him as saying foreign military bases in the region must end without providing details.
You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service. The time for our morning listeners is 9:30 a.m., and for our afternoon listeners, the time is 4:30 p.m. And now on to national news. ICE raids have waned, but immigrants face harsher rules. From Andrea Castillo of the Los Angeles Times. A year after the Trump administration kicked off its aggressive immigration enforcement tour with military-style raids across greater Los Angeles, federal officials have veered toward a less flashy but broader strategy, making immigrants' lives harder so they'll leave. The changes range in scale and scope, from disqualifying immigrants from certain jobs to indefinitely pausing the processing of visa applications. They target those lawfully present as well as the undocumented. Since President Trump's second term began, the administration has used executive orders and federal regulations to chip away at services or benefits, such as work permits and small business loans, that immigrants could obtain in the past. Now immigrants are finding that freedoms, the ones that once made the U.S. a desirable place to start over, are disappearing. Many are retreating back into the shadows as they fear previously routine tasks like traveling across states, filing taxes, and seeking medical care. The priority is to force people to leave the country or not come, regardless of legal status or really any other criteria, said David Bier, Immigration Studies Director at the libertarian think tank, the Cato Institute. They're taking a sledgehammer to the system. Trump won the White House in part on his promise to clamp down on illegal immigration, but recent polling shows support for his agenda has waned, especially after immigration agents shot and killed 2 U.S. citizens in Minneapolis earlier this year. In a statement, White House spokesperson Abigail Jackson said Trump's highest priority has always been the deportation of immigrants with criminal records. The Department of Homeland Security said Trump also prioritizes immigration that strengthens the country financially, socially, and culturally. The number of arrests by ICE agents has declined on average. ICE arrested about 1,000 immigrants per day in early March, down from a peak average of just under 1,400 in mid-January, agency data show. And there are fewer detained immigrants. Facilities across the country held about 60,000 detainees in April compared to more than 70,000 in late January. The downturns prompted some Trump loyalists to say the administration is failing to fulfill his signature promise, which is an assertion the administration rejects. ICE is not slowing down, said Homeland Security spokesperson Lauren Biss. Since day one, DHS law enforcement has been delivering on President Trump's promise to the American people to arrest and deport criminal illegal aliens. At a border security conference last month, Tom Homan, who leads border policy for the White House, suggested immigration agents would return to more muscular enforcement tactics. "You ain't seen it yet," he told the audience. But along with focusing on deportations, the administration is deploying other tactics to deter illegal and legal immigration. Curtailing visas. Last month, the Department of Homeland Security announced, except in extraordinary circumstances, immigrants seeking lawful permanent residency must leave the U.S. to complete the process. After a backlash, the administration defended the policy, saying it won't prevent anyone who qualifies for a green card from getting one. U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, the agency in charge of processing immigration benefits, has upped security screening since Trump took office. The agency says that's to root out fraud, but critics say all it does is unnecessarily slow down a system that's already vetting applicants vigorously. The administration indefinitely banned people from 75 countries from receiving immigrant visas, which allow people to move permanently to the U.S. In a similar move, the government halted the processing of immigration applications for people from 39 countries and who are already in the U.S. On June 5th, a federal judge struck down the policy in a scathing ruling that said the administration justifies its actions with pretextual concerns of national security that mask anti-immigrant sentiments. The judge's ruling may offer relief, but for many immigrants, the effects of the policy are devastating. Armin, a 42-year-old from Iran, said he has racked up more than $15,000 in debt since the pause took effect in December. Armin asked the Times not to fully identify him for fear of jeopardizing his immigration case. The nutritional scientist came to the U.S. in 2019 on a student visa and has a pending green card application under a provision that allows certain highly skilled immigrants to apply for permanent residency without needing an employer to sponsor them. After receiving his PhD and completing a postdoctoral program, Armin was in between jobs when he received a research grant in November. But with the processing of his work authorization halted, the university that issued the grant said it couldn't hire him as a research associate. In February, he was turned down for another job. Armin said he's confused about why the administration won't differentiate between legal immigrants and those who should be deported. I can't believe it, he said. I'm doing research, and my research has national interest benefits. You expect support from the government. Unfortunately, they don't differentiate. They don't care about your resume. Bier said the visa policies affect half of all legal immigrants coming from abroad. He published a report in April about how Trump has cut legal immigration far more than illegal immigration, noting that the administration's policies have led to big drops in visas for international students, high-skilled workers, and refugees.
And our next national story, Texas GOP hopes Trump puts his money behind Paxton. Article by Nolan McCaskill. Republicans want President Trump to put his money where his mouth is, behind his scandal-plagued ally, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. Paxton ousted four-term Senator John Cornyn in a primary runoff last month on the heels of Trump's 11th hour endorsement to become the Republican U.S. Senate nominee in Texas. That prompted political forecasters to shift the race in a state Trump won by nearly 14 points in 2024 from likely Republican to lean Republican. Paxton now faces a rising star in the Democratic Party and a fundraising juggernaut in State Representative James Tallarico, whose campaign reported raising $40 million through March, with $9.9 million on hand. Paxton, who has been indicted for felony fraud and was impeached by the Texas House, raised just $7.6 million through May 6th and reported having just $2.3 million in the bank. He has denied any wrongdoing. It would be very helpful if the president would help the people he endorsed. Senator Cynthia Lummis, a retiring Republican from Wyoming, said when asked if Trump should put his financial might behind Paxton. Texas is an expansive state with 20 television media markets. The Republican establishment already burned through tens of millions of dollars boosting Cornyn, who was widely considered a safer bet for retaining the seat. Senate Republicans' campaign arm warned in an internal memo last August that a Paxton nomination would put Texas in play for Democrats and cause Republicans to divert hundreds of millions of dollars that would otherwise be spent winning key battlegrounds. There's no doubt that Ken Paxton needs outside money to help him win this race, said one Texas political operative. Greg Keller, a spokesman for the pro-Paxton Lone Star Liberty PAC, said Republicans are coalescing behind Paxton as he builds momentum through Election Day. We are thankful to the president for his endorsement and leadership and look forward to joining the Senate majority next year, Keller said in a statement. There is no amount of money Tallarico can spend to erase his radical and dangerous record. Tallarico has pulled in crowds in deeply Republican counties in Texas by openly talking about his Christian faith and policies to take on billionaires he says are bent on keeping the working class angry and divided to protect their interests. Republicans, in turn, have accused him of holding heretical views and attacked him on immigration and gender issues. A June 9th Texas Pulse poll shows a tied race. Paxton is now forcing the GOP to develop a completely new strategy for the state they never believed would be in play, said Lauren French, a spokesperson for Senate Democrats Super PAC. Republicans hold a 53 to 47 majority in the Senate. They're targeting two Democrat-held seats in states Trump won in 2024, Georgia and Michigan. but are also defending seats in several states expected to be competitive this fall. That's North Carolina, Ohio, Maine, Alaska, and possibly Iowa and Texas. Trump's super PAC, MAGA Inc., is sitting on a $356 million war chest, but it has not yet committed any money to help Paxton. MAGA Inc. spent nearly $377 million to elect Trump in 2024 and $1.7 million this cycle to boost Republicans Matt Van Epps and Clay Fuller in special congressional elections in Tennessee and Georgia. Senate Republicans' primary super PAC, the Senate Leadership Fund, intends to spend $342 million in battleground states this fall, but its strategy does not include Texas. Senate Leadership Fund declined to comment.
You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service. The time for our morning listeners is 9:40 a.m., and for our afternoon listeners, the time is 4:40 p.m. And now on to business news. Golisano Institute will boost entrepreneurial scene. As 43 North winds down, business school looks to fill in the gap. From Mike Petro. With 43 North leaving Buffalo's entrepreneurial scene by the end of 2027, the region will need all the help it can get to continue advancing the startup ecosystem. That makes this an ideal time for the Golisano Institute for Business and Entrepreneurship in Buffalo to be opening. Construction has progressed significantly on the $10 million project to renovate the Buffalo Campus Center as the Institute prepares to welcome its first cohort this fall. The first, fourth, and fifth floors of the former Buffalo News Building at Washington and Scott Streets are being renovated to create classrooms, study zones, and collaboration hubs. The project is about 70% completed. Rochester businessman and philanthropist B. Thomas Golisano plans to reuse 3 of the 5 floors in the downtown building to teach entrepreneurship and artificial intelligence as part of an expansion of his business school. It's a move that should ultimately benefit Buffalo's broader entrepreneurial ecosystem. While 43 North is essentially making the 43 North Foundation the lead on supporting startups in the region, there will be a need for additional resources to assist. That's what the Institute's all about. It intends to provide spaces for advancement of entrepreneurial ideas and down the line, it is preparing to provide room to startup businesses that spawn out of the work being done at the Institute. The foundation really sees us as a talent creator for them, said Jim Dentinger, Executive Vice President and Buffalo Regional Director of the Golisano Institute. They want to create and help startups and help companies with technology, and that all takes individuals and good workers, which they're trying to create here, he said. Launched in fall of 2023 in suburban Rochester, the Institute is an alternative business school offering a 2-year professional certificate in business and entrepreneurship, including a new laptop and assistance with professional clothing and accessories. The 2-year program is designed to immerse students in a business setting, providing real-world experience and practical skills. Tuition is $8,900 per year, but after scholarships, the average student is paying between $3,500 to $4,000. Say Yes students can attend for free. It's aimed primarily at high school graduates and young working professionals seeking a path to business education that's more direct and comparatively less expensive than a traditional college path, but the Institute also wants to appeal to adults and retired people who have a business idea and would like to see it through. The Institute offers a new 1-year advanced certificate in artificial intelligence and business to better equip participating students, including working adults, with the leadership and technology skills for a digital world. Once a week, there will be speaking from experience programs featuring a speaker who's an entrepreneur, community leader, or business owner inside the first floor forum room, which can be occupied by as many as 700 guests. The Institute is teaching sales, business law, data and analytics, and accounting, as well as focusing on entrepreneurship. It welcomes younger students with an entrepreneurial idea and children of business owners who are passing down their leadership roles. There are also students who started toward a bachelor's degree and never finished their higher education path. 2 teachers per class do some lecturing, but most of the students' time is spent on project work to help them discover a pathway, identifying internship opportunities, and then ways to wow a future employer, Dentinger said. We're ready to change some lives, he added. We never let dollars get in the way of helping someone find their career. We're creating more of a pathway choice for students at the end of our program. With 43 North holding its 12th and final competition in October and ceasing operations by 2028, it marks a big shift in the startup ecosystem. It's one that banks on the region's startup ecosystem, almost non-existent when 43 North began, having evolved to the point where the region now has entrepreneurs thinking about starting their own businesses and has a support system in place to help them.
And our next business story, gratuities. Most people think tipping has gotten out of hand. Survey finds. Article by Betty Lynn Fisher. In a recent survey by Pop Menu, more than 3 out of 4 people, or 78%, said they believe that tipping practices have become ridiculous. 44% say they're tipping less this year than last year. Consumers are not shy about expressing their tip fatigue online and on social media sites. I can't enjoy a weekend without at least 5 prompts to tip for doing absolutely nothing, one user on Reddit said about tipping fatigue. The anxiety that comes from this false pressure to tip a percentage on every bill is ludicrous. What we have gotten to, that every place we go to is requesting a tip, a user on TikTok asked, while venting that someone taking her order was requesting a gratuity. There wasn't much service that was happening. It was just basic, she said. Tip requests are everywhere. People feel that tipping has become maybe ubiquitous and that now we're being asked to tip for everything all the time, even for things that we didn't feel were customary or normal. Pop Menu CEO Brendan Sweeney said. Pop Menu, which is a restaurant tech company, has surveyed customers about tipping for more than 5 years, Sweeney said. Tipping increased during and after the COVID-19 pandemic lockdown era, when the hospitality industry was hurting and consumers started leaving tips for takeout or tipping more as a warm and fuzzy feeling, Sweeney said. But then I think we got to a point where it was like, wait, is this still an emergency? Is it still we're helping people? At the same time, people are really feeling the pinch of inflation, he said, and more digital register systems at businesses have the tipping screen built into the software, Sweeney said. Still, Sweeney said guilt tipping or feeling guilted into leaving a tip to avoid the awkwardness is a real thing. When a digital screen asks for a tip, 59% of the respondents said they feel compelled to leave one, but that's down from 66% in September of 2025. And the share of people who say they tip on a weekly basis at places where it is not warranted also fell from 44% to 39%. Consumers estimate they spend about $130 on tips they didn't think were necessary in the past year, down from $150 when the same question was posed in September 2025. 66% of respondents said they even tipped a worker who provided poor service, but 42% of people said they were becoming comfortable skipping gratuities for certain services. How much are people tipping? The percentage of consumers tipping 20% or higher for restaurant servers and delivery drivers fell. 41% of consumers tip restaurant servers 20% or more, which is down from 45% in September of 2025. And 29% of people said they tip servers 15%, which is similar to September of 2025. 15% of people tip restaurant delivery drivers 20% or higher, down from 23% in September 2025. And 27% of people tip delivery drivers 15%, which is similar to September of 2025.
As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, call us at 716-821-5555. That number again being 716-821-5555. John Angelo Arcadi, Christopher Byers Ashton, Carmela Millie Leon Atrino, Marjorie A. Baker Nee Somerville, Francis J. Bogaz, Karen Bosch, Ross Bracco, Martin C. Brownsey, Sister Mary Ann Butler, SSJ, Barbara A. Chumra, Lois S. Dick Trunser, Nancy G. Dobmeyer, Nee Heigl, Donald Gaglia, Noel Greenspan, Stephen Gross, Lorraine Hellenbrook, Nee Bieber, Paul J. Hintermeyer, Jean M. Henley, Dennis Homan, Sally Hooper Nepanic, Michael Francis Horning, Joseph A. Juzkowitz, Cheryl L. Lewis, Bradley Lizowiski, Lois E. Long, Peter G. Limburner, Ronald M. Mancuso, Victor V. Murciano, Jennifer A. Munt Nee Frappier, James P. O'Brien, Lawrence H. Paulson, Ferdinand E. Phillips, Colleen M. Plasiska, Nee McCarthy, Barbara A. Quebrel, Michael V. Quinzio, Dennis E. Rajewski, Jane Elizabeth Reed, David A. Roche, Cheryl Lynn Schaefer, Jane F. Schutz, Donald E. Schwab Sr., Francis J. Seymour Jr., Sharon A. Sullivan Nee Schaefer, David S. Trageser, Paul P. Tronalone, James J. Vertolino, Coleman Volgnow, Elizabeth T. Walker, Frederick Williams, Tammy L. Williams Whitehead, Frederick A. Wolf Sr., Kent G. Zies. If you need further information on any of those names, please call us at 716-821-5555. That number again is 716-821-5555.
Thanks, Edwin. And moving over to horoscopes. Happy birthday to those born today, Sunday, June 14th, 2026. You have a strong urge to take charge. You are confident, single-minded, and tenacious. This is a pleasant year for socializing and enjoying life. Nurture the happiness you have within. Let your guard down and loosen up a bit. Have fun, but don't lose sight of your goals. The stars show the kind of day you'll have. 5 is a dynamic day. 4, positive day. 3, average day. 2, so-so. And 1, difficult. So for those born March 21st through April 19th, Aries, that's a 4 stars. Today's new moon is the best day of the year for you to think about something exciting that you can learn. Something interesting, fresh, and different. Tonight, new information. Taurus, born April 20th to May 20th. The new moon, that's 3 stars. The new moon today offers you a chance to think about money-making ideas. You might see ways to make money on the side. Tonight, shopping? Gemini, May 21st to June 20th. 4 stars. Today, the new moon is in your sign, which is the best day of the year to take a realistic look in the mirror. Tonight, you rock. Cancer, those born June 21st to July 22nd, 3 stars. You're eager to chat. Venus and Jupiter in your sign make you charming and entertaining. Today is a good day to think about your spiritual or religious values. Tonight, privacy. Leo, those born July 23rd to August 22nd, 4 stars. This is the perfect day to think about what friendships mean to you. It's rare. It's rare to have a good friend. Have you thought about what kind of friend you are? Tonight, be friendly. Virgo, those born August 23rd to September 22nd, 3 stars. Scrutinize how you deal with the authority figures in your life. How can you improve your relationship with others? Tonight, you are admired. Libra, those born September 23rd to October 22nd. This might be the best day of the year to ask yourself how you can enrich your life by learning or travel. What can you do to expand your experience of the world? Tonight, explore. Scorpio, those born October 23rd to November 21st, today's new moon is an excellent time to think about how to get out of debt. You also might think about how you handle shared property and shared responsibilities with someone else. Tonight, pay your bills. Sagittarius, those born November 22nd to December 21st, 4 stars. In a successful relationship, you must be as good for your partner as he or she is for you. Tonight, cooperate. Capricorn, those born December 22nd to January 19th. The old adage, or that's 4 stars. The old adage says, choose a job you love and you will never have to work a day in your life. This is something to think about. Tonight, work. Aquarius, those born January 20th to February 18th. 4 stars. Today's new moon is your chance to ask yourself how well you're doing at the art of living. Do you balance work and play in your life? So tonight, pick play. Pisces, those born February 19th to March 20th. 3 stars. What can you do to improve your relations with family members? Likewise, what can you do to improve where you live so you are happier living there? Tonight, chill and relax. And you're listening to a reading of articles from the Buffalo News for Sunday, June 14th on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service. And we'll return for more readings after this short break. Your readers today are
Edwin Vieira
and Dan Arth.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you. Because of our small power disruption on Friday, the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service was off air for a little bit. We apologize for any inconvenience that this caused on Friday. We are back on there. We got back on there about 20 to 4 on Friday afternoon. Because we had no power, we did not get Friday's news or USA Today or Journal done, and we missed a couple things over the weekend. You may have heard our misses. We apologize for these. Our live stream was down for a day or so, and because of that, this morning I made sure everything that was new is up to date on our podcast feed. If you listen online and wanted to hear the Jamestown Post Journal and the Dunkirk Observer and any of the community papers that usually are on Saturday, those are now live online. We apologize again for the inconvenience. Power system, fun stuff. But stay with us. We're back on air in both digital and standard formats. Stay with us, though. We'll be continuing the Buffalo News in just a minute.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers are
Edwin Vieira
and Dan Arth. Local news. Emails reveal school board did not act on claim against member. The Buffalo School Board was alerted to an allegation against a board member on June 2nd, yet has not acknowledged it publicly or taken an official action in the 10 days since, according to several emails shared with the Buffalo News. The emails did not indicate which board member was the target of the allegations, nor did it specify the nature or number of the allegations. The school board, just before noon Wednesday, announced a special meeting for 11:45 a.m. Friday, convened by Vice President Adriana Zulik, to discuss the hiring of outside counsel to address complaints, according to the notice sent to media. That meeting was canceled at around 5 p.m. Thursday without any explanation. This series of emails shared with the news on Friday afternoon begins with a message on June 4th from the board's leadership team, which comprises President Kathy Evans Brown, Yanita Everhart, and Zulik, that alludes to an incident. It has been brought to the attention of the board leadership that an allegation has been lodged against a board member. The email reads, "Such matters are taken seriously, and to protect the integrity of the review process, we must maintain confidentiality at this time. Additional information will be shared during the executive session on June 17th. In email responses sent several days later, board members Larry Scott and Cindy McEakin criticized the leadership team's handling of the situation, questioning their transparency, the nature and target of the allegations, who was handling the review process, and who decided how the review would be conducted. Between June 2nd and June 6th, the leadership team sought outside consultation with NASSBA to discern action moving forward," Evan Browns wrote in response, referring to a state association of school boards. That is the rationale to hold an executive meeting with the board to discuss how to proceed once the allegations are reviewed. Scott alleged board leaders were not following the board's sexual harassment policy. Since outside counsel needed to be sought, how come we didn't do so as a board in accordance with this obligation in our sexual harassment policy, Scott wrote. He then cited an investigation of any complaint, information, or knowledge of suspected sexual harassment will be prompt and thorough, commenced immediately, and completed as soon as possible from the policy. Multiple other board members chimed in, noting they were not aware of the nature of the complaint. According to an email from Evans Brown on Tuesday, the entire board received a mandate to complete a sexual harassment training by June 30th. McEakin followed with several other questions Wednesday, referring to the training and asking if it was related to the allegations. She doubled down on her concerns about the delay in addressing the complaint. It is atypical for the board to wait 2 weeks for notification on such an issue, especially one that requires a review process, McEakin wrote. Who made this decision and why? In response to the criticisms, Evans Brown said the leadership team has followed non-discrimination and sexual harassment policies and would share more about the complaints in a private session before Wednesday's board meeting. Contrary to any claims of leadership gatekeeping, Evans Brown wrote, precautions have been taken to maintain confidentiality and a non-biased process.
Peace Center leader focused on its growth. The new executive director of a local nonprofit that co-organizes and sponsors some of the largest demonstrations in the Buffalo area, including the No Kings protest, says she wants to diversify the group's reach. Stephanie Mejia said her goal for her new role leading the Western New York Peace Center also include building community, making the city of Buffalo its primary focus. She was appointed to the position late last month. I think a lot of people know who we are, but when I'm attending events with the Peace Center, even political outreach events, there's a majority of folks, probably 60 and above, and white. That's fine, but where's everybody else? Said the 33-year-old. How do we teach our younger generation, whether it's millennials, Gen Zs, or younger, how to advocate for themselves in the community and understand what local politics is? Mejia said. Do you know how taxes work and how that could possibly increase your rent? And also understand that landlords have to give you 30, 60, or 90 days notice of eviction, depending on how long you've been there. We want to expand our outreach, get more people involved, build community, because that's the biggest thing, she added. Mejia also wants to shift the focus of the Peace Center. For a long time, she said, the organization has prided itself on promoting peace abroad and locally. We've done a lot of things. We've focused on a lot of issues that have been impacting the world abroad and also impact here. But I really want to make a shift to our priority focus here. And then, if it impacts the rest of the world, fantastic, she said. I want to focus on what's going on in our community. What do we need on the west side, east side of Buffalo, North Buffalo? Mejia, the daughter of immigrant parents from Honduras, is a longtime resident of Buffalo's west side and has built her career around supporting marginalized communities, advancing human rights, and strengthening grassroots networks. She previously served as supervisor of housing and homeless services at Catholic Charities of Buffalo. Prior to that, she worked with the Lieutenant Colonel Matthew Urban Human Services Center of Western New York, providing case management and community support. Mejia is a board member for Big Table Community Cafe, a pay-what-you-can nonprofit on Hudson Street on the city's west side, dedicated to food security and community nourishment. Mejia also sits on the board of directors for Housing Opportunities Made Equal, or HOME. We're thrilled to have her, said Victoria Ross, a familiar face at the Western New York Peace Center, who'd been executive director for several years before stepping down in June 2021, when Deidre M.L. took the reins. M.L., a longtime Buffalo community organizer, urban farmer, and doula, left the position in February 2025. Ross will return to the community coordinator role she held before she was executive director. Change is good, Ross said. New, fresh energy is always a good thing. The Western New York Peace Center was founded in 1967 as a chapter of Martin Luther King Jr.'s Clergy and Laity Concerned About Vietnam. The center's website says it focuses on peace, nonviolent conflict resolution, and social justice. Last month, the center organized the Western New York Women's March in Buffalo. The annual event drew thousands of people to Niagara Square and is focused on topics like abortion rights, the plight of women in war-torn countries, environmental sustainability, climate change, and peaceful negotiations. The center also co-sponsored an interfaith rally for solidarity with Gaza at Niagara Square in October 2025, along with other religious and community organizations. Between 200 and 300 people gathered for the interfaith rally, chanting, "Free, Free Palestine." The group co-organized the June 2025 Buffalo No Kings rally, part of a series of demonstrations in all 50 states against policies of the Trump administration. More than 2,000 people attended Buffalo's rally. In April 2025, the organization co-sponsored the Buffalo United March, a local chapter of a national protest against the Trump administration. The event drew thousands. These are changing times, and they've only gotten more challenging. We have our work cut out for us in kinds of ways, and she's just the right person, Ross said of Mejia. The mission statement is peace through justice at home and abroad, but also we need to be a strong and growing organization because it's needed. We're needed, and we have the legacy and the principles and the spirit that I believe is what's needed right now. The Western New York Peace Center is hosting an open house for the community to meet Mejia on June 26th from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Western New York Peace Center Carriage House at 1272 Delaware Avenue.
And our next local news story, lawyer professor vie for House seat. Article by Stephen Watson. The two candidates running in this month's Democratic primary for a congressional district that covers southern Erie County and much of the southern tier hold similar positions on many issues. Aaron Geese and Kevin Stocker both prioritize making gas, groceries, and other essentials more affordable for working families. They say they want to ensure that good quality education, healthcare, and housing are not out of reach of rural residents of the 23rd District, but there are key differences between the two. Stocker is a lawyer and frequent candidate for elected offices in Buffalo and its northern suburbs, with one primary victory to his name. He has regularly clashed with leaders of the region's Democratic and Republican parties. I don't recognize the country I was raised in or educated in. What used to be wrong is now right. What used to be right is now wrong, Stocker said in an interview. And what a great task to take on. And I say we're fighting, hopefully together, to save America, to save what democracy means. Gies teaches theology at a university. He's a transplant to New York, but unlike Stocker, lives in the 23rd District. Gies has the support of many Democratic officials, including in Stocker's home base of Erie County, and has far outraised Stocker. We have never had a politics in this country that was based on justice, that was based on treating other people the way that you want to be treated. Gies told the Buffalo News, that's where we need to go, and that involves building a future government that is transparent and accountable and focused on making our lives affordable. Early voting began Saturday, and in-person voting takes place June 23rd. The winner takes on Representative Nicholas Langworthy in the general election. Ruby Red District. The 23rd Congressional District sprawls across 9 counties, portions of Erie, Niagara, Schuyler, and Steuben, and all of Chautauqua, Cattaraugus, Allegheny, Chemung, and Tioga. It covers working farms, old industrial cities, and numerous colleges and universities. 40% of voters in the district are registered Republicans, compared with 28% who are registered Democrats. Another 25% are not registered with a party. President Trump defeated Democrat Kamala Harris by 21 points among district voters in 2024, and the Cook Political Report rates the reliably red district as R+10 on its partisan voting index. Gies on campaign leave. Gies, 45, is a native of High Point, North Carolina. He moved to New York in 2019 to take a position with St. Bonaventure University, where he is an associate professor of theology and Franciscan studies. He lives near campus in Olean, occasionally helps out his wife's veterinarian practice, and serves on the board of the nonprofit Canticle Farm in Allegheny. Gies announced his campaign for the 23rd District last year and is taking an unpaid leave of absence from his teaching position this calendar year. He said he set his sights on Langworthy's seat because he was upset by the incumbent's form letter response when Gies wrote to him early last year to object to a Trump administration policy that could make it harder for Ukrainian war refugees to gain temporary protected status in this country. Gies has not run for office previously, but has donated to Democratic candidates and knocked on doors on behalf of Harris's presidential campaign. I didn't start out with thinking I should replace Nick Langworthy. I started with someone should, he said, but that led to the exploratory committee, and that led to where we are today. A frequent candidate. Stocker is a 62-year-old Kenmore resident and personal injury lawyer. He has represented clients in lawsuits against the Catholic Diocese of Buffalo, Tonawanda Coke, and the Amagon Funeral Home Crematory. He previously served as Kenmore Village and Tonawanda Town prosecutor. Stocker has run for Village Justice, Town Justice, State Assembly, and State Senate, all without winning a general election. His only victory came in 2014 when he upset then State Senator Mark Grisanti in the GOP primary in the 60th Senate District before losing a 3-way race that November for the seat. When people say, well, you've lost races, I'm like, well, isn't that the same as life? You have setbacks in life. Life is filled with struggles. Stocker said, I tell my kids, you have to be willing to get up off the ground and persevere in life, that it's only when you quit and stop, then you are a loser. Lawyer versus professor. Gies said he wants to boost rural healthcare providers that have struggled under the Trump administration's Medicaid cuts. He also said Congress needs to pass a strong war powers resolution and take back the authority to impose tariffs. That belongs to us, per the Constitution, Gies said. Trump has usurped it. Stocker said Congress needs to repair the damage Trump has done to this country and to its relationship with other nations. He also said he wants to increase Social Security payments and maintain financial and food assistance for district residents who rely on those programs.
You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service. The time for our morning listeners is 10:15 a.m. For our afternoon listeners, the time is 5:15 p.m. And now on to a front page to a feature story. Health insurers ask state for rate hikes of up to 24%. The three dominant health plans in Western New York are again requesting rate increases for 2027 as the cost of medical care and pharmaceuticals continues to soar, though most of the proposed hikes are lower than a year ago. The rate requests submitted to the state and posted online Friday affect people who buy individual commercial health insurance and small employers with 100 or fewer full-time workers. Together, they comprise a small slice of members for most insurers. The rate increases, which do not affect employers with more than 100 workers, highlight the upward pressure on premiums and how consumers continue to pay more for health insurance year after year. Highmark Western New York and Northeastern New York, which includes Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield of Western New York, is requesting an average increase of 23.8% for individuals, a market in which it has 2,735 members. For small group plans in which Highmark has more than 35,700 members, the insurer is seeking an average increase of 9.2%. Independent Health is requesting an average rate increase of 14.2% in the individual market, where it has nearly 4,100 members. On the small groups in which Independent Health lists about 21,800 members, the insurer requested an increase of 11.4%. Excellus Health Plan, which does business in Western New York as Univera Healthcare, is seeking an average rate increase of 17.2% in the individual market and a hike of 17% for small groups. Excellus, based in Rochester, has 17,260 members in its individual plans and more than 137,500 small group members. The average increase requested by health plans in the state was 20.7% in the individual market and 25.7% for small groups. The rate hike requests for Independent Health and Excellus are lower than last year. Highmark's small group rate request is lower this year, but its individual market request is smaller to a year ago. But what the insurers say is the three major health insurers for Western New York say they're trying to keep costs low for members who are understandably frustrated by rising health costs. But the insurers also say premium rates are primarily a reflection of the cost and demand for medical care, as well as prescription drugs. Univera, Highmark, and Independent Health all spent at least 90 cents out of every premium dollar collected on health care for members. Healthcare costs are rising for everyone, providers, payers, and the people who rely on care, driven by the higher demand, an aging population, rising prices, and rapid growth in specialty drugs and GLP-1s, Univera President Paul Valley said in a statement. As these pressures challenge our communities, we are continuing to partner with local providers to support prevention and chronic care. This approach helps keep people healthy, manage ongoing conditions, and catch issues earlier, leading to improved health outcomes and better control of healthcare costs overall. Highmark said its proposed 2027 rate for individual and small group products affecting fewer than 10% of its members reflect growing medical costs, driven by increased hospital and prescription drug costs, as well as the impact of New York regulatory mandates, taxes, and fees. Highmark said it is investing in innovative solutions to expand access, improve health outcomes, and deliver greater value for our members. Independent Health spokesperson Frank J. Sava said the health plan's proposed premium increases are lower than previous years due to its successful efforts to lower the trend of rising healthcare costs through our medical management initiatives and collaborative relationships with physicians and providers. A year ago, Independent Health requested a 38.4% increase in the individual market and 19% for smaller groups. As part of its efforts to lower costs, Sava said Independent Health has been able to reduce inpatient admissions for individuals with chronic kidney disease, lower readmission rates for members with asthma, and increase preventative screenings that helped avoid potential complications. To keep members healthy, Sava said, Independent Health will also bolster coverage for preventative care, expand access to virtual service, and, quote, will continue to engage members in their own health through our Red Shirt Rewards program, which enables members to earn up to $30 in gift cards for completing a variety of preventive services. Compared to prior years, the finances of the three insurers are starting to stabilize. After 4 straight years of financial losses, the local Highmark affiliate reported net income of $101 million on revenue of $3.1 billion in 2025. Independent Health, which is in the process of affiliating with Schenectady-based MVP Healthcare, reported a net loss of $64.2 million on revenues of more than $2.6 billion in 2025, but its results were improving in the second half of the year and into 2026. Excellus, which includes Univera, reported an operating loss in 2025 of $108 million on revenue of $7.5 billion. But strong returns in the stock market helped Excellus finish 2025 with a net margin of 2%, or $150 million.
And our next feature story, Fonda to host First Amendment celebration to counter Trump. Article by Dawn Chmielewski. As mixed martial arts fighters gather today on the south lawn of the White House in a cage match to celebrate President Trump's 80th birthday, a spectacle kicking off a series of events commemorating the nation's 250th anniversary, actor and activist Jane Fonda will sponsor entertainment of a different sort from New York City. Fonda's advocacy group, Committee for the First Amendment, will host a concert featuring actors, musicians, and public figures appearing in support of free speech and democracy, principles that have come under attack during Trump's presidency, according to Fonda. This is our documentary moment, Fonda told Reuters in an interview. History is going to write about this, and I don't want to be on the side of people who said, oh my God, things are so bad. What am I going to do? No, I want to be out in the front. The Rise Up, Sing Out concert, which begins at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time today, will include performances or appearances by Julia Roberts, Lily Gladstone, Bette Midler, Patti Smith, and Rufus Wainwright. The event takes place at the Town Hall, a century-old landmark founded by suffragists, and will be available to watch via live stream. The No Kings website lists hundreds of concert watch parties planned across the country. Fonda, 88, has a long history of activism, from working on behalf of Native Americans and the Black Panthers in the 1960s to protesting the Vietnam War in the 1970s. She earned the nickname Hanoi Jane following a visit to North Vietnam in 1972, though she would later express regret for a photo of her sitting on an anti-aircraft gun wearing a helmet. In recent years, the Oscar-winning actor has been involved in climate activism and has been arrested multiple times in connection with her Fire Drill Fridays protests in Washington, D.C. A new documentary, Gaslit, which premieres on Friday, follows Fonda on a road trip through Texas and Louisiana to expose the environmental and health impacts of oil and gas extraction. Whole communities have been razed because we insist on drilling for oil and fracked methane gas that we're shipping around the world that is killing people and nature and animals, and it's got to stop, said Fonda, who blames the Trump administration for weakening environmental regulations. Fonda has also called on federal and state regulators to block the proposed $110 billion merger of Paramount Skydance, PSKY.O, and Warner Brothers Discovery, WBD.O. Fonda said that though she personally likes Paramount Skydance CEO David Ellison, she is concerned about concessions he made to the Federal Communications Commission to win approval of Skydance's acquisition of Paramount. The lifeblood of creativity is going out the window in order to satisfy these autocrats in the White House, she said. Ellison has said the combined Paramount Warner Brothers Discovery would invest in quality content, releasing 30 movies a year, something that will benefit Hollywood's creative class. In October, Fonda revived the Committee for the First Amendment in response to a perceived rise in authoritarian practices and attacks on free speech. It was a group her father, actor Henry Fonda, formed in 1947 when Hollywood figures were called to testify before the House Un-American Activities Committee. We are the storytellers. We are the artists, Fonda said. Without the First Amendment, we cannot exist.
Feud creates confusion about wedding invitations. It's Asking Eric. Dear Eric, 3 years ago, I had a falling out with my cousin Harris at a family gathering. Harris, like me, is a retiree in his mid-60s. We'd been friendly before this. Harris also has 3 siblings, and I'm on great terms with all of them. He confronted me about something that I wrote in the family gatherings logbook that he found negative. I attempted to apologize, but he rejected it and refused to talk. He left the next day, and I've not seen him since, nor had any contact as of 3 years later. I wrote an email a month after the incident saying I wanted to talk. No reply. I wrote a letter 4 months later, another letter a year later, in which I implored him to call or email. Nada. I phoned, left a voicemail at one point, and also went unacknowledged. Finally, 5 months ago, I wrote one more letter asking to talk. None of this correspondence has been acknowledged. Meanwhile, he communicates with my brothers and via group text that I'm a part of. Also, I remain in touch with his 2 sisters and his brother, but have never mentioned any of this to them. I don't know if they're aware of the falling out. If they are, I suspect they consider it a matter between Harris and me. I don't dispute that. Harris has informed my brothers and me of his daughter's forthcoming wedding reception and out-of-town guests' dinner. We will all be invited, formal invites to come. I could travel to the wedding and likely would do so if not for the falling out and the ghosting. It just doesn't feel right to me to attend when I have zero relationship with the father of the bride. 2 of my brothers plan to attend. The third's unlikely to go, but for a separate reason. Do I go to the wedding and see what happens, or just send a card to the bride and groom? From out in Oregon. Dear Oregon, if you get a formal invitation from the bride and groom, consider yourself invited and go if you think you'll have the opportunity to support and celebrate other family members. Harris has made it clear that he's uninterested in mending fences, so respect that. You and he may never go back to being friendly, but if he's not personally excluding you from the wedding plans, there's no reason to let your conflict bleed into other relationships in your family. Dear Eric, I feel uncomfortable when people speak negatively about their bodies while in conversation with just me. I don't know what to say in the moment and often replay the conversation later. I'm not comfortable offering reassurance or advice, and I'd rather avoid these discussions altogether. I try to respond briefly and change the subject, but it still feels awkward, especially when people compare themselves to me. How can I respond kindly? From At a Loss for Words. Dear Words, something as simple as, I'm sorry you feel that way, can convey compassion without piling on or getting drawn into a discussion you want to avoid. However, in reading your question, I kept coming back to the last thing you wrote, that people are often comparing themselves to you when speaking negatively about themselves. Is it possible that some of your discomfort also stems from a very reasonable desire to not have your body spoken about? When people make these comparisons, they may think that what they're saying is benign or even complimentary. But if it's not landing that way for you, then it's not welcome. Maybe you don't want to be the image that another person uses to denigrate themselves. Maybe you don't want commentary on your body at all. These are more than reasonable wants. No one's body is fair conversational game. And it would do everyone a lot of good to remember to ask before making a comment, even if that comment is intended as a compliment. This can be hard for some folks to reckon with. Why can't I tell someone their hair looks nice? You can, if they're open to it. But there are many reasons a person wouldn't want to talk about their hair or their hips or their spleen or whatever might have you. The reasons might be medical, emotional, or just a matter of preference. We don't have to walk on eggshells around each other. We just have to be conscientious and respectful. So to that end, if comments about your body are making you uncomfortable, say so. I know you mean well, but I don't want to talk about my body. I appreciate that you have an opinion, but we've all got things we like and things we'd like to change. Let's just leave it at that.
And you're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is, for those listening in the morning, 10:30 a.m., and for those listening in the afternoon, 5:30 p.m. On to sports. Knicks defeat Spurs in Game 5 of the NBA Finals to snap 53-year title drought. The New York Knicks, for the first time in 53 seasons and third time in their storied history, are champions of the NBA. The Knicks outworked the San Antonio Spurs Saturday in Game 5, 94-90, to take the NBA Finals 4-1, the culmination of a dominant postseason run that saw them win 15 of their final 16 games And now finally, after more than 5 decades, New Yorkers will watch their team hoist the Larry O'Brien Trophy. New York proved itself this postseason through a resilience in which no deficit was too large to overcome. The Knicks faced first quarter deficits of at least 10 points in every game of the finals and outscored San Antonio 29-18 in the fourth quarter to clinch the title on the Spurs' home court. In Game 5, that grit was on display once more as the desperate Spurs jumped out to a 23-13 first quarter lead, but Jalen Brunson put the Knicks on his back, scoring a game-high 45 points, a Knicks record for points in a finals. The Knicks set the tone for NBA Finals by claiming Game 1 with a 105-95 victory, overcoming the Spurs' home court advantage. Building on this momentum, New York fought through a close finish in Game 2, edging out a 105-104 win to take a commanding 2-0 lead as the series shifted back to New York. When the series moved to Madison Square Garden, the Spurs spoiled the Knicks' homecoming, bouncing back with a 115-111 win in Game 3. Game 4 seemed destined for the Spurs, who dominated nearly the entire game and built a staggering 29-point halftime lead. Yet the Knicks orchestrated what will undoubtedly be remembered as the greatest comeback in NBA playoff history, mounting an extraordinary second-half rally, sealed with OG Anunoby's iconic tip-in with 1.2 seconds left to play to shock the Spurs and seize a 107-106 victory, which sent the series back to San Antonio. The Knicks did not get to celebrate the clinching victory in front of the raucous MSG fans, but they had already captured the hearts of New York City, uniting a fan base that had been starved for a title. New York last won the NBA Finals back in 1973, which came 3 years after it won its first NBA championship in 1970. This comes as Knicks coach Mike Brown wins his first NBA championship as a head coach, establishing him as a franchise icon. Brown empowered his players to find their roles and deftly adapted to adjustments opposing teams had made. During the first round, the Knicks found themselves in a 2-1 hole against the Atlanta Hawks, who had smothered New York with their defensive length and athleticism. Brown, however, tweaked New York's offense to run more through Towns, who at times played like a point center, distributing the ball to his teammates. The Knicks won the final 3 games of that series and then proceeded to sweep the Philadelphia 76ers and Cleveland Cavaliers. When New York stole the first 2 games of the finals in San Antonio, long-suffering Knicks fans began to anticipate a title. And even after the Spurs won Game 3 at MSG to snap New York's 13-game playoff winning streak, chance of Knicks in 4 quickly shifted to Knicks in 5. But following a dismal first half in Game 4, it looked like the tide had completely turned until the team responded with the record-breaking comeback. That victory, which will be remembered by every New York fan who witnessed it, launched jubilant reactions across Madison Square Garden and New York City, setting the stage for this Game 5 victory, and a celebration which will begin in the Lone Star State before a one-of-a-kind party in the Big Apple.
Hurricanes on the cusp of the Stanley Cup. The Carolina Hurricanes were trailing the Vegas Golden Knights in the Stanley Cup final heading into Game 4. Now they're up 3-2 after becoming the first team in the series to win 2 in a row. They're in position to clinch their first Stanley Cup title since 2006 if they win Game 6 on Sunday in Las Vegas. The Golden Knights will try to stave off elimination at home and force a Game 7 back in Raleigh, North Carolina. Knights coach John Tortorella vows that they will even saying that he's going to leave his clothes at the team's Raleigh hotel. Here's what happened in the last 2 games as the series turned around. Brandon Busey takes over the net. He replaced Friedrich Andersen for the third period of Game 3 with the team down 4-0. He stopped a Mitch Marner penalty shot and allowed only a fluke goal in the second overtime after the Hurricanes rallied to tie the game in the third period. Busey got the starts the past two games and was solid in Game 4 and even better in Game 5. It's been a lot of fun, Busey said after Thursday's game. You work hard, you enjoy the moment, then you put your head down and grind. Andersen, who needed a break, coach Rod Brind'Amour said, quoting goalie coach Paul Schoenfelder, hasn't dressed for either game and hasn't practiced with the team. He did skate before players showed up for Thursday's practice and is available if needed, Brind'Amour said. As an aside, the Hurricanes also made a goalie change during their 2006 championship run. It was much earlier as Cam Ward replaced Martin Gerber in the first round and went on to be voted playoff MVP. Jordan Staal's on fire. The 37-year-old Hurricanes captain is known for his face-off prowess and defensive ability, but he has turned back the clock with his first 5-game goal streak since he was a rookie in the 2006-07 season. Doing it in the Stanley Cup final puts his name alongside Hall of Famers Yvon Cournier, Jean Beliveau, and Maurice Richard, and Fred Cyclone Taylor. Staal has the size and strength to be a scoring threat in front of the net, and now the goals are going in. He knocked in a rebound for his first goal of Game 4, then forced a turnover and scored while falling down on the second goal. His Game 5 goal was on a deflection. Balanced scoring comes through. The second line of Logan Stallenkoven, Taylor Hall, and Jackson Blake has been a constant throughout the playoffs. Staal took off in the final, but top-line players Andrei Shenkinov and Sebastian Aho have been relatively quiet. That ended in Game 5. Svechnikov scored twice on the power play, and Aho ended a 5-game drought. Brind'Amour kept those two together and changed up the third person to get the line going. Kane's playing better defense. Marner had a hat trick in Game 3 because he was getting behind the Hurricanes' defense. Brind'Amour adjusted, and Marner has 1 point in the last 2 games after getting 7 in the first 3. The Carolina coach didn't like the way the team played in the first period of Game 5, but the Hurricanes were able to play their style for much of the rest of the game. They even outscored Vegas 2-0 in the second period after being outscored 9-1 in the first 4 games. Hart's play has dropped off. When a reporter asked whether John Tortorella considered inserting backup goalie Adin Hill in the third period of Game 5, the Golden Knights coach said it could be, quote, the stupidest question I've ever heard. But Hart hasn't been as strong in this round as he was in the first 3 rounds. He's at a 2.22 goals against average and .924 save percentage heading into the series, but he's given up 4 goals in every game in the final and has a .856 save percentage in the series. The Golden Knights can't control Staal. Tortorella usually doesn't discuss players on the other team, but he did mention Staal after Game 4, saying, he's killing us in front of the net. The Golden Knights thought they had Staal tied up on his first goal in Game 4, but he got to a rebound in Game 5. He checked Golden Knights defenseman Brayden McNabb along the boards to create space to skate toward the front and the net and redirect a pass. William Karlsson injury hurts. He left Game 5 and didn't return after being checked by Sean Walker. The trainer was looking at his arm. Tortorella said the team, quote, probably will be without Karlsson, a two-way center who kills penalties and plays the power play. The Golden Knights had to juggle lines without him, hurting their ability to come back. And penalty killing, penalty woes. The Hurricanes struggled in the first 3 rounds on their power play, but have found their game. They use Staal at the start of a power play. If he wins the faceoff, he stays on the ice and provides a big body in front. If not, he goes off, and the speedy Nikolai Ehlers comes in. The Hurricanes have had 2 games in the final in which they scored 2 power play goals. Golden Knights injuries contributed. McNabb left Game 2 after being hit by a puck, and Karlsson left in Game 5. The Golden Knights didn't help themselves with the number of penalties they took. They were called for back-to-back penalties in Game 5, and Carolina scored on the second one. The Hurricanes also scored on Vegas's 4-minute high-sticking penalty in the third period.
And our next sports story, U.S. men's national team off to dreamy World Cup beginning. Article from the Newswire Services. After a 32-year wait for a World Cup match in the United States, the result was like a dream for the U.S. men's national team. Valerian Balogun scored 2 first-half goals in the United States' 4-1 win over Paraguay in the Group D opener on Friday at Inglewood, California. More good news came after the match when it was learned that star Christian Pulisic, removed at halftime as an injury precaution, is fine. The U.S. had never before scored 4 goals in a World Cup match. They scored 3 total in 4 matches in the 2022 World Cup. A real dream, you know. It's a dream. It's a dreamy night, Balogun said. After a 7th-minute own goal put the U.S. in front, Balogun scored in the 31st minute and in the 5th minute of the first half stoppage time to give the hosts a 3-0 lead at the break. Mauricio got a goal back for Paraguay in the 73rd minute, but Gio Reyna capped the match with a brilliant outside of the boot strike deep in the second half stoppage time. Balogun is the first U.S. player to score multiple goals in a World Cup match since Bert Patanada had 3 in a 3-0 win over Paraguay during the first edition of the event in 1930. The same match was the last time the U.S. men's national team earned a World Cup victory by at least 3 goals. Though he might have deserved a celebratory party, Balogun had other plans. To be honest, I think I probably just will watch some Netflix, he said. Pulisic, who was involved in the own goal and assisted on the second, left after getting kicked in the left calf during the first half. I don't think it's anything, he said of the ailment. Coach Mauricio Pochettino said of taking Pulisic out at halftime, "We didn't want to take any risks." The own goal by Paraguay's Damian Bobadilla was the result of a well-crafted build-up which started in the back when Alex Freeman pinged the ball to Weston McKennie with space to roam. McKennie passed left to Pulisic, who slalomed through 2 defenders and drew a third before passing to the incoming McKennie in the center of the box. The ball deflected off Bobadilla for the 3rd fastest U.S. World Cup goal in history. Balogun doubled the count moments after he was denied a goal because of an offside call. Pulisic wheeled down the left side again before a pinpoint pass between 2 defenders found Balogun down the middle for a one-touch goal. Balogun scored a magnificent goal to close a near-perfect half for the United States. He received the ball down the right flank from Malik Tillman, moved inside defender Omar Alderete at the top of the box, and spun around defender Gustavo Gomez before firing to the upper left corner for his 11th career international goal. Mauricio got Paraguay on the board in the 73rd minute from a seemingly innocent play. Julio Enciso picked up a loose ball and fed it quickly to Mauricio for a shot past U.S. goalkeeper Matt Freese. A moment later, Ricardo Pepi, who had just replaced Balogun, had an attempt saved by Orlando Gil. Reyna's goal from just inside the 18-yard box capped a back-to-front sequence by the U.S. team with time winding down. In the 53rd minute, U.S. captain Tim Ream was initially shown a yellow card for fouling Miguel Almiron, but the ruling was overturned. The yellow card instead was issued to Almiron for embellishment after a video review for mistaken identity showed there was no contact. This type of review is new for the 2026 World Cup. The U.S. got a boost with the return of defender Chris Richards, who injured his ankle May 17th while playing for English club Crystal Palace. He missed the 2 most recent friendlies leading into the tournament. Freese, who made 1 save, made his first World Cup appearance over Matt Turner, who started all 4 matches at the 2022 World Cup. The first round of Group D play concludes Saturday when Australia opposes Turkey in Vancouver. All 4 teams are in action on Friday when the United States meets Australia in Seattle before Paraguay faces Turkey in Santa Clara, California.
Is Leonhard ready for NFL play calling duties? It's the Bills Mailbag by Jay Skursky. Welcome back to another Bills Mailbag. Let's jump right into your questions. Rick asks, in all the rush to build a new set of coaches, did the Bills get carried away? We jumped at a well-traveled player-turned-coach. Granted, Sean McDermott's defense was ineffective, but new defensive coordinator Jim Leonhard seems light on experience with only 3 years in the NFL. Sean Payton's defense has been good, but I thought Leonhard had been with him longer. I know many great coaches weren't great players, but had a lot more NFL experience. Vince Lombardi and Bill Belichick come to mind. From Jay, it's true that Leonhard hasn't called his own defense yet at the NFL level. Growing pains will inevitably come with that. The same was true when Joe Brady was hired for his first job as a play caller in the NFL. That doesn't mean Leonhard was the wrong hire, though. He's been regarded as a rising star in the coaching ranks. It was an upset when he didn't get the Wisconsin job after serving as the Badgers' interim head coach. He worked with the Broncos under Vance Joseph, who is well thought of as a defensive mind. Leonhard had other opportunities this offseason, but Brady did a good job by selling him on Buffalo. Will it work? Who the heck knows? We can't draw any of these conclusions until the games matter in September, but I wouldn't stay up at night worrying about Leonhard's lack of NFL play calling experience. Every great coach, even the 2 Hall of Famers you mentioned, had to start somewhere. Leonhard was a smart player and by all accounts is a smart coach. Let's see what that amounts to for the Bills' defense in 2026. And Brenda asks, after hearing about Patrick Mahomes' staggering new extension that makes his contract worth more than $500 million, 2 questions for you. How, if at all, does this affect the Bills and Josh Allen's contract? Did you ever think you'd see NFL contracts in this realm? Switching gears, one more question. Are you as outraged as I am that both Lindy Ruff and Rasmus Dahlin did not win their respective NHL awards? What a travesty. From Jay, here's the answer. Allen just signed his extension with the Bills a little more than a year ago. He's got 5 seasons left at an average annual value of $55 million. The Bills don't need to feel any pressure to revisit Allen's contract at this point. He's compensated fairly. Given the ungodly amount of money the NFL rakes in, nothing surprises me anymore when it comes to these contract figures. Keep in mind, too, that most NFL contracts are not fully guaranteed, so the numbers you initially reported are not always the reality. For Mahomes and Allen, they'll still be filthy rich, no matter what, but not guaranteed contracts still matter a great deal to the rank and file. And as for the Sabres, travesty is the right word for Ruff not winning Coach of the Year. I have no clue how that happens. Leading the Sabres out of an abyss to an Atlantic Division title is more impressive than what John Cooper did with the Lightning this year. I'm not sure how any rational person would disagree with that. I will say, though, that it does seem like Coach of the Year awards have simply been boiled down to which team had the biggest year-to-year improvement. I'm not sure that's a good thing. As for Dahlin, no doubt it would have been great for him to win the Norris Trophy, especially after what he dealt with off the ice in regard to his fiance's health scare. But Zach Werenski, the winner, and the other finalist, Cale Makar, had great seasons.
Thanks, Edwin. And our next sports story, Sir Jude the Bear. Jude Bowery earned his reputation as a protector, and that's a good trait for a rookie lineman to keep developing. Article by Catherine Fitzgerald. When Jude Bowery packs for training camp in a few weeks, he'll fill a toiletry bag gifted to him by his mother, embroidered with the name Sir Jude the Bear. The first half, Sir Jude, is something his mother, Howlin Pennicott, has called him since he was a baby. Bowery came up with the bear when he was young, but it really caught on during his 4 years as an offensive tackle at Boston College. He's so big and he's such a protector, but then he's such a teddy bear, Pennicott told the Buffalo News. So I think when he needs to turn that gentleness on, it's on. And when he needs to put on the aggressiveness to defend and protect, it's there. These days, Bowery is learning more about protecting one of the NFL's most valuable players, Buffalo Bills quarterback Josh Allen. Bowery officially signed his 4-year rookie deal on Friday, the last of the Bills' 2026 draft class to do so. The Bills have listed Bowery a 4th-round pick as both a tackle and guard, a nod to both his versatility and to the team's intent to give him reps at both positions. As Bowery makes the jump from college to the NFL, he's learning quickly. Obviously, it's different football, Bowery said last month. Everybody's really good, but it's exciting. It gives you a new challenge. It gives you a challenge each and every day to work on and just get out of your comfort zone. I like that a lot. A new journey. Bowery was something of a late bloomer, at least when it came to football. He fell in love with the game in 2018, his first time truly playing the sport. He grew up playing basketball, but when he tried a few reps at defensive end in high school, it set him on a different path. Pennicott approved. When he was playing basketball, he was good, but he thought he was like LeBron James, and as a mom, from my point of view, I was like, nah, you're not so good. Pennicott said, I'm not going to tell him that you are such a good coach. You know the game. You read the game well, but I would never tell him that he doesn't play that well. With the switch to football, Bowery's grades also skyrocketed. Coaches let him know that he needed to stay on top of his schoolwork if he were going to take the field. Bowery found his way to the offensive line, and years later, he thinks he's still far from hitting his ceiling. I believe I could be one of the greats, honestly, Bowery said. And that's not to throw a shot. It's gonna take a long time and reps each and every day to get to that level. But I feel like with my mindset and my attitude, just being new to the sport somewhat relatively, I feel like I have a very high ceiling. Since coming to the Bills this spring, first for rookie minicamp, then for organized team activities and team minicamp last week, in addition to individualized training, Bowery has stayed for additional time on task with teammates, going over what he worked on earlier that day. The goal is simple. I want to be great, Bowery said. Bowery gets a lot of things from his mother, including his tendency to be a perfectionist, but he's working to make sure that doesn't hinder him from learning at this level. Spring football is the time for rookies to make mistakes after all. I just tell myself you can't be perfect, especially when you do make a mistake. Like, so what? Bowery said. And I kind of look at the vets and how they go about making mistakes as well, and how they approach the next rep. So it's just a matter of telling myself, like, you're going to be fine, bro. Like, stay down, don't make the same mistake, and just learn from what happened.
And now over to the scoreboard. Here's Friday's results from baseball in the American League. Cleveland took on Detroit and won 3-2. Boston won over Texas 10-1, and Toronto beat out the New York Yankees 8-5. Houston beat Kansas City 10-8, and the Angels on Tampa Bay was 4-3, and Angels win. In the National League, Miami won over Pittsburgh 8-3. It was a shutout between Milwaukee and Philadelphia, with Milwaukee 6-0. Arizona won over Cincinnati 5-2, and the Mets beat Atlanta 7-5. With the Chicago Cubs in San Francisco, it was a 5-1 Chicago Cubs win. In the Interleague, it was Baltimore versus San Diego at 7-3 and a Baltimore win. The White Sox beat out the Dodgers 8-2, and Seattle won against Washington 10-2. Minnesota won against St. Louis in 9-8, and the Athletics beat against Colorado 6-4. For the Sunday games in the American League, the Yankees will be at Toronto at 1:37 p.m., Detroit will be at Cleveland at 1:40, Houston will be at Kansas City at 2:10, and Tampa Bay at the Angels at 4:07, with Texas at Boston at 7:20. The National League games, Miami will be at Pittsburgh at 12:15, Arizona will be at Cincinnati, and Atlanta will be at New York Mets, both at 1:40. Philadelphia will be at Milwaukee at 2:10 p.m., and the Chicago Cubs will be at San Francisco at 3:10 p.m. In the Interleague, it'll be Seattle versus Washington and San Diego at Baltimore, both at 1:35, and St. Louis at Minnesota, as well as the Dodgers at the Chicago White Sox at 2:10 p.m., with Colorado at the Athletics at 3:05 p.m. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Sunday, June 14th. We read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, call us at 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Dan Arth
and Edwin Vieira. Thank you for listening.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability